For January 25th, we're talking about those hidden parts of ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, loving ourselves or not, the times where we feel like we're transforming inside or being transformed or changed, and our hopes, our dreams, all the things that we keep hidden in our hearts.
Hi, I'm Candy. I'm a hypnotherapist who's deconstructing from evangelical Christianity, and I know how mindset shapes our behavior. So, in this series, I'm going to share my daily reflections from 3 different devotionals. The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and that one's a little more spiritual, non religious. Also, Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, which is a very modern Christian approach. And My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers, which is a very classic Christian angle. My goal is to help you see how each one of these devotionals or these day books might shape your mindset a little differently. And if you're into that kind of reflection, please like and follow for more. Let's get started.
For January 25th, in the Book of Awakening, Mark Nepo talks about how loving yourself, when you begin to love yourself, you will be able to love the world. It makes me think of the scripture when I was in evangelical Christianity that we would use love your neighbor as yourself, which is something Jesus said. And we always used to take it as I remember asking, like, well, how do you know if you love yourself? And the response would be, everybody loves themselves. And as I grew and got older, I began to realize I did not love myself. I actually had been programmed to loathe myself. And so loving myself was a whole new thing. And I had trouble loving others, even though I wouldn't have known that. I thought I was loving others. What I was doing was people pleasing. I was appeasing others to appease my own nervous system. So as you love yourself, you will love the world. That's how it works. However much you love yourself, you're going to love others. And people who are like, put themselves on like a pedestal above others, that's not love. That's usually insecurity. When you recognize your equality with others, regardless of their station in life, regardless of their race, their religion, their sexuality, we are one with one another. And to love yourself, to see yourself as equal, to see yourself as worthy of God's love, even. Just worthy of love, worthy of being on this planet. You bring something that's can bring joy to those around you and to yourself. And the reason this is like a hidden thing is because nobody knows when you see yourself, when you recognize your own self-worth. It shows up in your behaviors towards others, towards yourself. But when you believe in your own self-worth, first of all, that takes courage, because you're having to see something that nobody else necessarily sees, because we don't see our worth walking around. We try to show our worth by the clothing we wear or the jobs we hold or the titles we hold. But that's really not what our worth lies in, because that can be taken in a moment. That's not where our worth lies. We have self-worth simply because we are from the same source. We're human beings. We are connected to one another. And when we believe in our worth, then we understand that oneness, we can see that in others instead of degrading them. And when we find ourselves doing that, judging another, it's an insecurity in us. It doesn't mean you can't say something is beneficial or not beneficial. Like, you can look at somebody and go, that way of living is not really helping them or helping others. It's hurting. That's not the judgment I'm talking about. That's kind of a right judgment, a fair judgment. You're basing it on what it looks like, at least from your perspective in that moment. And, get to know them a little bit better and see if that's true. Because I definitely know that when I was in Christianity, I thought a lot of lifestyles were evil, unbeneficial to the world, and yet they were hurting no one. And we're actually probably making life a lot better for the person living them and those around them. But there are harmful ones. There's no doubt about that. I'm not debating whether there's harmful lifestyles. There are things when we harm ourselves, but it's usually because we don't see our worth. We don't feel our worth. So these are kind of it's like he describes it as though you're feeding an invisible bird or a clear bird. The bird just wants to sing and fly. And that's you. That's your inner self. You just want to be you. And we kind of withhold or prevent ourselves from being ourselves because we feel like we don't have that worth. We're not worthy enough to do that. A lot of us, and this isn't just those who have left evangelical Christianity, deal with imposter syndrome as you're learning something. And as you, especially when you first step out in it, oh, imposter syndrome it's there. And what that is, if you don't know what that is, it's basically telling you don't belong here. You're not good enough to be here. You're rubbing shoulders maybe with people that you've looked up to, and now you've trained or gotten to their level in education or whatever it is, or even skill, and you feel less than still. You feel like you don't belong. And that is just a nervous system wiring, a programming. So in the Book of Awakening, the message is begin to love yourself. Love those things about yourself, like the things you really like, and allow yourself to embrace those. Your laugh, your ability to create something, your love of nature, whatever it is. And just sit with that and enjoy that part of you that's connected to everything and everyone else. Know your worth. And as you know your worth, you will love yourself. And when you love yourself, you will love others, which will create a better world for all of us. And Jesus calling the hidden part that we're talking about, or that pondering that we might do, is during our quiet time. Okay, so as a Christian, we were taught to have quiet time, which meant spending time in prayer and reading the Bible. And basically, in today's reading, Sarah Young says that if you sacrifice your time to spend with Jesus, he will bless you and your friends and family. And it's during this time, or during your giving of this time, this intimate relationship, strengthening it, which is what you do in this quiet time, that's when he shapes you into what he wants you to be. And he's transforming you from the inside out. So no one can see it, but he's changing you on the inside, and it's going to show up on the outside. His job is to do that. Your job is to just yield to whatever he's doing. Just submit to it without resistance. Don't try to speed it up. Don't resist it by slowing it down. Just hold his hand and trust as he reveals one step at a time. There can be some peace to this when you are leaving your fate, I guess, into the hands of somebody who you believe has ultimate control over everything. There is peace in that. But if your life starts going in a direction that is, because we have subconscious programming. Here's the thing. There is subconscious programming that gets you in loops. And the loops at first start for reasons to keep you safe. A lot of times in childhood. Like I've mentioned before, I was a people pleaser. It kept me safe in an environment that was threatening to me. So I learned how to read the emotions of the people in the room, read their energy, and do what I had to do to make them comfortable and happy. If I did that, I would feel safe in my body. So in doing this, if I were to continue to be spending time with Jesus, I would continue to stay in that loop, most likely, and just trust that I wouldn't resist it. I wouldn't try to change who I thought, this people pleasing. I wouldn't probably been aware of it necessarily, just that I would feel resentment, and then I would fight the resentment, and I would get shame would come on top of that. So instead, I would just do what I felt like God was telling me to do, which I was told, gentle and quiet spirit, submit, all the things, obey your parents. And I wouldn't try to resist. And I'm not saying that resisting would have been a good idea at the time, but as I got older, it would have helped me to begin to work through those things. And I took a long time because I didn't know any of this stuff. And I also was caught in Christianity. And so I can understand the peace that it can give if you don't understand subconscious programming, if you don't understand the loops that you get caught in. But when awareness comes, you don't need to wait on some invisible being to work through it with you. You need to just become aware and then gain tools as you go along to guide your life in a different direction. So you become what the desires of your heart, whatever that is, that's good for you and those around you, instead of the desires of Jesus's heart, which you do not know, which are likely conditioning that you've been taught Jesus wants you to be. Whatever that looks like. We've all been taught a certain message, certain messages about Jesus and God and what he expects of us and what he expects our lives to look like. And they all are supposed to look pretty similar to one another, according to the upbringing I had anyways, especially for a woman. You know, be a stay-at-home mom, raising your kids, which you better have kids in that religion. That's what it want. And if you can't have children, then you adopt or foster. And you be gentle, quiet spirit, submitting to your husband, no need to work outside the home. Even if you have dreams to do that, that's your dreams. You're resisting Jesus's. See what I'm saying? Like, it causes you to live a life that easily can build into resentment because you're actually clashing with the desires that you have, the dreams that you have. And those dreams, why don't we equate them from coming from God when we have them, when they come up and we just have dreams to be or do something? So in Christianity, I can see how it would bring comfort when you're in that world. But once you have grown up enough and you become aware, this is not helpful anymore, in my opinion. And in my utmost for his highest, basically we're talking, the invisible part of us that I want to talk about is he's talking about how you should always expect God, always leave room for God to surprise you. Don't expect him to do things in a particular way, but do expect him to show up and kind of live in that constant state of expectancy. And this one was really interesting to me because this is how I felt deconstruction started for me. I discovered God in a whole different way, a way I had never known, a way I did not expect, and a way actually at first I did not like. To discover that, to come to the conclusion through being convinced, actually by the Bible itself, that Jesus had already returned meant that I was not going to escape in the clouds and I was going to have to die. And I remember that thought hitting me pretty hard. It was like a morning, like I am going to die someday, and grappling with that for a bit. And then I finally accepted. It's part of the living experience. Just like everybody else, you're not special. You're not going to escape it. And embracing it. And now I don't fear death because I've kind of gone through that struggle and discovered it's okay. It's okay. And I just find it interesting that so many Christians today resist the movement of deconstruction. The people, saying that's not the Jesus that I was raised to believe in, when they reject, what's going on in the world and the people that are saying they're Christians and, doing very hateful things or believing very hateful things or pushing for legislation that hurts others. And they say, well, no, because they cling to their idea of who Jesus is. They have put God in a box. And when I discovered God was bigger than any box that could contain God, it was freeing. Because then I was able to go, well, maybe that means that he's not so judgmental. He's not so exacting with rules and laws. And then I started to read the Bible in a very different way. And I saw Jesus was kind of saying that. He was saying that there's something that he wasn't saying like every other God, like here's the rules. I mean, how is that different than any other religion? Christianity used to pride itself on being different than all the other religions. And yet they look very much the same, just different rules, just a guy who died on a cross to sacrifice himself to himself so that he could accept us. And yet, come to find out later, there are other religions that have that mentality, have that view. And we thought we were Christians as evangelicals, and Mormons weren't, and Catholics weren't, and yet they believe those things about Jesus dying on the cross for their sins. It's just very interesting that when God does do something that they like, or let's say it this way: when something happens that they agree is God's will, something they like, they'll say that's God's will. Like, take for instance a law getting passed to ban certain people from being able to get married. Okay. But when that law when there's a law passed that says that certain people can get married that they don't want to get married, or their idea of God doesn't allow for, they will say it's the devil, instead of saying, maybe that's the surprise that God's trying to teach me and show me. They don't. They resist it. So it's just very interesting. Those are my thoughts on that, and take what you will from those 3 books. I'm going to choose to continue to love myself so I can love others and make a better world. Have a great day.
Remember, you get to decide what you devote your thinking to today. You might not be able to control every thought that comes in, but you can definitely decide what you entertain. And whether it comes from something I've said today or something completely different, choose wisely and set an intention that truly benefits you and those around you. And if you found any value here today, don't forget to like and follow. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and let's keep our minds on what helps us love ourselves and each other a little bit better every day.